able to tend those fires, those embers of justice. So, welcome to the campfire, you all, a place of reflection and a circle of voices. And to kick off the year, we are going to be talking about learning and right relationship. For us as a community restorative justice hubs, and I'll be sharing some screens here. For us as a community restorative justice hubs, learning together is really who we are. We come together with a mission to support one another in transforming lives and systems by advancing restorative justice. Here in Chicago, we are a network of community-based organizations that's all been impacted by violence and systematic harm, and in providing that trauma-informed lens and opportunities for safe space, healing, and reconciliation, we're really collaborating to build stronger, healthier communities. Because here at the Community RJ Hubs, we believe that everyone has an opportunity to be safe and whole. And our big vision is what we're talking about today, right relationship. So that's a little bit about us. I'm excited to just share a little bit more. We do have some of our own staff on the call. Tom, Emma in particular, can I ask you all to find our website and drop it in the chat so if folks want to learn a little bit more about who we are, they can go to our website to learn more about who we are. So thank you all. Why are we here today? What are we going to get into? Well, first of all, we are gathered around this fire, and we're going to start with a really great reading, icebreaker, and then we're going to tend those embers of practice. We get a chance to hear from Elena today, who's really going to guide us into a conversation on what is right relationship. And what I love that we're going to talk about today is really from a science-based perspective. And then we have the opportunity to feel our own flames, to really think about the conditions that we need for the relationships that we're currently embarking in and the partnerships and the relationships we want this year. And finally, we'll share some key takeaways and commitments as we carry the torch. Let me pause here. I do love to know if there's anything on this agenda that you're just like, man, I actually thought we were going to talk about this other thing. Or do we have space and time to talk about it? Is there anything you all want to add to today's agenda? Because we can get into it as well. Nothing at all. Awesome. I guess that agenda is ready for us. Let's keep going, you all. I do have a little icebreaker. And this icebreaker is called What's the Unspoken Rule? Oftentimes we go into spaces where we work or where we learn together, and there's often an unspoken rule. Don't let them see you texting, right? Don't let them see you strolling on your phone. Don't hold the meeting up, right? Can you share or think of one unspoken rule that you've noticed? This could be as serious or silly as you can think of. Feel free to drop it in the chat. I shared a couple of mine, but I'll be curious what you all see as unspoken rules. You are welcome to unmute or drop into the chat. All works.
Don't ruffle anyone's feathers.
Oh, tell me more, right? Because that one really gets people going. People just like to do their thing. Where do you see that show up at, Elizabeth?
Um, when like two groups that need to work together, um, but might have different, slightly different missions. We're just supposed to play nice in the sandbox or whatever. And even though what we're tasked with doing is disrupting the system.
Exactly. Exactly. Come on. What else? What are some other unspoken rules? Go over to the chat just to see if I'm missing anything. Don't show anger, right? How many times we see that, right? Like really trying to hold it in. Or the idea that some input is more important than others based on hierarchy or funding, right? So I don't really want to hear from you, but I need to hear from you. Or this piece of information matters over here. Ugh, so much. Couple more. Anybody else feel comfortable unmuting and sharing?
Yeah, I got one. I think it's something in the workplace now that if you're on a webinar or something, you should have like your headphones in, like not being too loud in the work environment. And so I've just been doing a different approach. So I've been doing my webinars out loud, like without headphones, just because I know some of my colleagues in the restorative justice space may not be able to attend, but they might benefit from hearing something that they may not be able to participate in. So kind of break it's like lighthearted and funny, but also trying to experiment, try something different, kind of breaking the workplace rules and just see what happens.
Absolutely. I love that, Rodney. Yeah, you never know what little nugget somebody might hear in the background.
Are you breaking that rule right now? So we should say hi to all the people in your background.
Yeah, they can
Hey,
hear you.
everybody.
They say hi too.
I love it, Steve. I would even throw out there, even in the Zoom world, right? It's almost like that unspoken rule that you absolutely need to be muted. And yes, for the fact of being able to hear, but I think if we're really simulating being in person, let's let all the sounds come together, right? I think there's something to be said about that. Okay, one more. Anybody else want to share an unspoken rule? Oh, thank you. In the chat, it's not at work, but I learn a lot in my neighborhood gym. I think the unspoken rule is don't look people in the eye when they're doing a hard set and making noises. I agree. Like that's awkward. Just don't have eye contact. Don't do it. Absolutely. Thank you all for sharing. Why are we even talking about unspoken rules? Well, oftentimes when we think about our relationships, it really is the way that we communicate with each other non-verbally, right? The culture that we set that we don't often name, but it's there. So we're going to be able to get into that a little bit more today. But before that, and I apologize, I probably should have put the reading before this. I do have a poem that I would love two people to help me read. Can I have two volunteers? Two volunteers, just so you know what you're volunteering for. This poem is called Ask What is Possible. May I have one volunteer to read this slide, and then I have a second volunteer to read the next slide. Who wants to go first? Hey, hey.
I'm happy to read.
All right, we got our two folks. All right, who's going to go first? Susie, you want to take it?
Sure, I'll jump in. Let me put my glasses on though, so I read it right. Ask what is possible. There is no greater power than a community discovering what it cares about. Ask what is possible, not what's wrong. Keep asking. Notice what you care about. Assume that many others share your dreams. Be brave enough to start a conversation that matters. Talk to people you know. Talk to people you don't know. Talk to people you never talked to.
Let's go. Awesome. All right, our second volunteer who wants to read for us. Beautiful. Thank you.
Is that me? Okay.
Yep. Uh-huh.
Be intrigued by the differences you hear. Expect to be surprised. Treasure curiosity more than certainty. Invite in everybody who cares to work on what's possible. Acknowledge that everyone is an expert about something. Know that creative solutions come from new connections. Remember, you don't fear people whose story you know. Real listening always brings people closer together. Trust that meaningful conversations can change your world. And rely on human goodness. Stay together.
Woo! Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Powerful reading. I'm always captivated by that line of you don't fear people whose stories you know, right? Like talk about relationship and getting to know each other. I'm curious before we just move on from this. Are there any lines or things that stood out to you all? I'm happy to kind of go back and forth on these slides if it makes sense. Anybody want to share?
I like the last line a lot because it's like medicine right now. because it all, like everything we're seeing in the news feels like you can't rely on human goodness, but that is actually our greatest strength, is relying on human goodness and staying together. It really is the medicine we need.
Mhm. Thank you. No, I agree. Anyone else want to share?
I love the idea of asking what is possible rather than what's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So often when you get together to discuss issues in the community, it's what's wrong. So it's just a great flip of that.
Yes, we reframe it. Absolutely. Thank you all. Let's keep this lens going, right? So far, we've already covered some really good stuff, talking about the unspoken rules, asking what's possible. Now let's move into a conversation around right relationship. What is it? Why are we even talking about it? Why does it matter? Why is this the first campfire of the year? I would love to turn this around to Elena, who is our executive director over at the Institute of Public Safety and Social Justice, to really guide a conversation around right relationship. Elena, I'm giving it to you.
Hey everybody. I wanted to just start. There is a definition at the top. This is right relationship is an understanding that we belong to each other and respecting the inextricable links that we have to each other. Okay, so before we do that, I want to just do a little exercise, and I want you to think about um, imagining a social situation where you walk in to a room and you see somebody that you do not get along with. You have some unresolved disappointment, beef, maybe you feel betrayed, like something where you just feel like you know that you are out of right relationship. I want you to think about how that feels in your body, how it feels in terms of your first reaction, what you want to do. Do you walk into the room? Do you find a reason to walk out of the room? Like, how do you feel in that moment? And I want you to think of just a word. And if you want, you can put that word in the chat. Clenched up. Yes. Neck. Yes. That's how I feel. Avoidance. That's how I feel too. Yes. Discomfort, right? No eye contact. Maybe you might want to like find a reason to go to the bathroom immediately, right? Nervous. Yes. All those things. Now I want you to walk outside of that room. You're back in a safe space. All right. You put on your favorite comfy sweater and slippers, and you're going to go back into the room, right? When you go back into the room, you see an old friend, and whether they've passed away or if they're living still, it doesn't matter, but somebody that you know loves you and holds your best interest at heart, and that you feel you can be your full self with. And you didn't expect them to be there, but there they are, just sitting on the couch. What do you do? And how does it feel in your body? Do the same thing of just maybe putting your answers in the chat. Yes, yes, relief, run for hug, yes. Yes. Yeah. Warmth, smile. It's like the question about how does love feel, right? Just but this lovely feeling of being relaxed. And just with that example, we think of those things as like, oh, it's just a moment, my body's reacting to these different things, right? Except for the fact that relationships and the feeling in our body that we get from them can create wellness and can create illness over time. And so, and the kind of dimensions of right relationship are multifaceted, because it's not just like, a person that you see. It can be, and I'm sure this is not hard for many people to imagine, a whole government that you are not in right relationship with, like policies that you're not in right relationship with, environmental decisions that you're not in right relationship with, right? And so think about the relationships, being in right relationship is not just, to yourself first, because a lot of times people are not in right relationship to themselves. I want you to think about how many times in a day or week or month or year that you practice negative self-talk, right? And that you are more the person that you're avoiding in the room rather than the person that you'd run to hug. So that's your primary relationship, is with yourself. Are you in right relationship with yourself? Are you on your own side? Do you do the things that are best for your health and well-being and future success? Are you in right relationship with yourself? Are you in right relationship to each other? That was exactly the example that I gave. Are you in right relationship with your larger community? That could be a church community, a work community, a recreation community, it could be your neighborhood. To the environment, are we engaging in practices that are not in right relationship with our atmosphere, with our world, the health of our planet? And that also, are we in right relationship with policies and laws around us? And what is being in right relationship? It's the quality of the connectivity that matters. And I feel like sometimes I'm not even aware of how important that connectivity is until I don't have it, right? And we are most healed when we are connected, because we heal in community. Now, there's some data about this, and I want to talk about it. That when, this is a slide from the Average Childhood Experiences Study. And I know a lot of people have seen the study or who are aware of it, but basically came out a couple decades ago, where Rob Anda and Vince Felitti, two medical doctors, did this study that basically was looking at why people become sick in adulthood. They were looking at addiction. They were looking at all kinds of stuff. But what they found was that many of their patients were talking about childhood events that happened. And so they did a study on a whole bunch of people in Kaiser Permanente in San Diego, and basically asked, these are like kind of the top 10 things that came out in that study. Experiencing physical abuse, emotional abuse, or sexual abuse before the age of 18, experiencing physical or emotional neglect before the age of 18, or experiencing one of these things that they called household dysfunctions before the age of 18. And divorce, it really could be any kind of loss of a parent, domestic violence, substance use. And these are like, what they found is that most people experience them. Like 2/3 of their sample experienced at least one of these. And if you experienced one, you are more likely to have difficulty with health and wellness. And it's like a stair-step pattern, so that, like, if you have one, it's like creates more difficult outcomes. If you have two, more. So that people with high ACEs, with like 10 or more, face real hardships. You can change the screen. And there was another study that was done that basically added things like experience racism, witness violence. This is by Roy Moore in Pennsylvania. So he found racism, violence, if you've ever been in the child welfare system, if you've ever been bullied, and if you feel that your neighborhood is not safe. Those were also very common childhood adversities, and that basically had the same kind of physical effects. All of those things are like being out of right relationship. And what they found as a trend is that, the kind of end game is people with very high ACEs died nearly 20 years earlier than those with no ACEs. So this is all bad news about what happens when we're not in right relationship. But I really want to talk about what are the things that help people get into right relationship. And this is another, you could go back to the baby, because this is like people can be born in raw and like not in right relationship in many ways. And I'd like people to just look at this for a moment, because this is such a good example, because sometimes people think kids that are having trouble in schools, which is like usually the first kind of institution where, parents are flagged as bad and kids are flagged as problematic. And you can see here, what are all of the ways in which this child is not in right relationship with policy, with community, with their home life. Like this is a great example of what it means to not be in right relationship, and how the most innocent among us can be imbued with this expectation, and how difficult it is when this is normalized from infancy to grow up with healthy boundaries and with healthy expectations about what you should be able to express and how you should be able to express yourself. And so, like, there are real consequences to being out of right relationship and not even understanding what it means to be in right relationship. It takes some time sometimes. You can go to the next one, Karlyn. So I want you to think about what the world would really look like if we were in right relationship to all of these things, to ourselves, to each other, with the larger community, to our environment, to the policies and laws that are around us, that we felt really in step, that we felt proud to belong to our society, and we felt like it represented us, that we felt like we wanted to work for greater togetherness with all of our neighbors, that we don't feel the sense of division, because those things actually create real live illness within people. And so the way to do that is really through restorative justice. You can do the next one, Karlyn. This is to make a, this is, I, okay, yeah, this is like how policies are made and why it's so important to have policies that reflect that. When I talked about, can you imagine us being in right relationship? We make choices about policies, and all of our policies that we make and all of our laws that we make and all the practices that we have, they're like on a continuum, right? And so on the left side, it says, I love you and I'm so happy to see you. I always joke that this is like being born like a baby in Finland, where they give you a box of stuff and the government helps you, and they have like a lactation consultant come to your house, and you get to stay in the hospital for a long time and all these things. It's like pouring down happiness and welcome into someone. And then the next one is like, welcome, friend, and then hi, just kind of, that's neutral, right? But then there's other policies that are like policies and practices that are like, what are you doing here? Or get out of here right now. Or I will willingly work toward your demise. I often work with healthcare systems, and one of the things that I think is interesting is that I'll say, how do you want your emergency department to run? Like, how do you want people to be greeted? They say, well, we want them to be like, welcome, friend. And I said, okay, imagine that the person that's coming in is a woman who does not speak English. She's wearing a hijab. She has obviously had some injuries and she has no insurance. How is she going to be treated in your emergency department? And when you think about other people's experiences, that it can be this continuum, like it could be the same policy, but it could feel totally different to one person rather than another. Like I always say to people, when I get stopped by police, which happens occasionally, I expect them to say hi. I expect them to be reasonable with me. And then I ask, how many people fear something worse? And you can see lots of black and brown hands going up of like expecting, what are you doing here? Or get out of here. Like fear. And so these are the types of like ways that policy and practice is implemented in any system, in a court system, in an educational system, in a healthcare system, in a public health system. And the way that we allocate resources is also kind of underscoring either wellness or illness, depending on who's in it, right? That we don't realize sometimes that we make systems for people that are easier to serve or more pleasant to serve or who have more money or whatever, right? And so actually, when we create policies that are on the right half of the spectrum, they make people ill and they will die sooner when you live under those policies. Whereas when you have laws and policies that are at least acknowledging people's realities, like high, you got to get to high until it starts promoting wellness. So how do you get to high? Next one. All right, so this is a great study. A man named Mark Hatzenbuehler is a psychologist who was working in a gay men's clinic in Massachusetts and was really concerned about the fact that gay men that he was treating were far more depressive, were on more medication, required more hospitalizations, doctor visits, that sort of thing, than the general public. And he engaged in a 2-year study to try to figure out, is this genetic? Is this, just trying to figure out, like, what was the deal? Why are these gay men that I'm serving more depressed than the general population? But what happened was just a beautiful, just spontaneous design in that gay marriage was legalized in Massachusetts a year into a 2-year study. And what he found in the first year versus the second year was that there was a statistically significant decrease, medical care visits, mental health care, mental health costs, like prescriptions, suicidality. There were all sorts of things that improved because inclusion makes such a huge difference in people's health and welfare. This is just one tiny example, right? That when our laws are supportive of wellness and inclusivity, that people live longer, stronger, better, more connected lives. But if we are making policies that are vilifying and demonizing groups of people, those people will die sooner and they will live sicker lives. And we see this again with racial breakdowns. We see it with now in the transgender legislation. It's happening in many ways, shapes, and forms. We can go to the next one.
Yeah, and I just want to pause here too, because when I first even seen this study, I just thought it was so fascinating, even just the impact of when we're isolated, right? When we feel like we don't have community and when we're all alone versus the power of being able to like fully be in community, fully be who we are, fully engage the world in a way that says I'm here and I'm seen. And I just thought that was so powerful. Elena, I'm wondering if we can pause here and see it in general, if there anything coming up for folks, right? So far, you've guided us on a really great conversation around marginalization and what that looks like. We've talked about ACEs, we've talked about toxic stress. I'm curious what's coming up for you all as you've heard some of these studies so far and how it relates to relationship or being out of relationship. Anybody can chime in, and if not, we'll just keep the ball rolling. But let's
Well,
hear
I
some.
guess more than anything, I feel when I look at that spectrum on policy, I just feel very sad in terms of where our policies are now and the long-term impact for the health of our nation, regardless of where it ends up politically, with the policies the way that they are. Um, we just have to acknowledge that that's going to cause a lot of harm through the next several decades, not just in the short term.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, it actually creates ripple effects. And I'm not talking about epigenetics here today, but epigenetics is the science behind how the experiences that you have change the way that your genes are expressed. And they change the way your children's genes are expressed, the way that their children's genes are expressed. And when whole populations go through great difficulty, it ends up creating intergenerational differences in terms of things like anxiety and depression, those types of things.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
I think that's a good leeway too into some of the help, right?
Yeah, so I'm big and trying to figure out how to make this happen too. And when we think about, I think of some of the non-negotiables of restorative justice and thinking about the one of the main goals in my head is to be in right relationship with each other. And how can we get into right relationship? Because we'd much rather walk into that room that's filled with love and acceptance and happiness than the room that's filled with rejection, anxiety, nervousness, that sort of thing, right? And there's a beautiful study that was done in Washington State that looked at these are slides by a group called ACE Interface, which Rob Ando, one of the principals of the ACE study, has founded along with Laura Porter, who is a phenomenal practitioner that is able to turn the ACE work into policies and practices. And she's a wonderful mentor to me. So anyway, the study that was done in Washington found that they tried to look for help that helps, and they looked at 4 things. And when we talk about help that helps, remember how I talked about how like the greater the ACEs you have, the more adversity you face as a child. There's that stark thing with the birthday candles and all that. Well, this is what makes me feel hopeful, because a lot of it is how you cope with it and who you have around with you to cope with adversity. So the 4 things that they found that really help is having support, having supportive relationships. And that just means feeling connected, like somebody holds you in positive regard. Really, that's it. And when you are supported, you feel hopeful about what's possible for the future because you feel that you matter to someone. You matter. Your life matters to someone. And they hold you with a loving eye. That's support. It doesn't cost anything, and it's as simple as that. It's authentic, meaningful connection support. The second one is help, having 2 or more people who give concrete help when needed. Now, they have found that, like, if people have very high ACEs, like 8 or more, it's helpful to have 3 or 4 people who can help you with tangible help when needed. And this could be anything from, like, I need a pair of dress shoes for an interview, or can you give me a ride to the doctor, or I don't have any food in my fridge. That's help that helps. Now, there's something called community reciprocity, watching out for each other. Basically, having each other's backs is community reciprocity. You watch my kid, I'll watch yours. Watch my house while I'm out of town, I'll watch yours. If I run out of something, we'll help each other. So community reciprocity is tied to help as well, but it's just basically about knowing that your community will do favors for you, with like willingly, gladly. You know why? Because they love you. So community reciprocity. And then social bridging. Social bridging is an important concept because it means like it's really hard. Social bridging is really hard when there's concentrated poverty because you have a bunch of people who need the same stuff and who kind of have the same access to resources or the same lack of access to resources. Healthy communities have a range of people who have different kinds of reaches into different kinds of things, right? I had a conversation with a bunch of wealthy families in who live in the North Shore, in north of Chicago, and they were talking to each other about when your kid gets arrested. And I was like, what? I didn't even know that your kids did get arrested. Like, I was just like, hold the phone. Why do your kids get arrested? Because I live in the city. I didn't know, right? And they said, well, for drunk driving or for drinking at a party or whatever. Like, they get arrested for different things. I said, well, what do you do? They said, well, we just get the parent, we get the parent who's the lawyer, which was a fascinating sentence all in of itself. We get the parent who's the lawyer to go ask for a station adjustment at the police station. I was like, what? I didn't know what a station adjustment was. It's just like you go down there and be like, can we act like this never happened? And they're like, sure. That is fascinating to me. And so, like, when I found that out, I started learning much more about social bridging and how we could get station adjustments in the city. And basically, what it would take in order for people to have confidence that you could give station adjustments to kids in the city. And that means that the community has to have their back and has to vouch for them and has to work with them. And then the police will be like, oh, okay, yeah, we'll do a station adjustment. So that's the type of help that helps. And those are the kinds of communities these are the kinds of things that forge healthy communities, right? And that help people live longer, stronger lives. So this is some data to it, right? And this data was in 2014, so it's a little bit data, but you can see the point of it, I think, is timeless. And that basically, remember how I talked about when people have zero adverse childhood experiences, they're a lot better off than people with very high adverse childhood experiences. So I just want to walk through one of these. With the orange bar, this is people with very low support and hope. And so the people with the orange bar, they don't have a lot of people that hold them in high regard or that they can depend on to call and just get a pep talk. Like, that's not happening for them. And many more of them are smokers. And you'll see that people with low support and hope with zero ACEs, about 1 in 5 of them smokes. And people with low support and hope, that 35 out of 100 smoke. So it's like over a third of them smoke, right? And so that's a lot. That's a lot of people. But when you look at what happens with the green bar, with people with high support and hope, it almost reverses the effects of the childhood adversity. And so what happens is when we have the help that helps, it infuses people with these kinds of restorative relationships. This is real restoration. And it's not only reflected in how you feel at a party or walking into a room, it's reflected in your lifelong health, well-being, quality of life, and length of life. That just having something that costs nothing, support and hope, will reverse the deleterious effects of childhood adversity, which is amazing. Amazing. That's what right relationship does. Let's go to another one. Here's another one with poor health and support. Look at the difference. Poor health means people that could not function well within the last month, that for 2 weeks of the last month, they were not able to do what they wanted to do because they were in poor health. With people with a lot of adversity who face a lot of chronic toxic stress, meaning many facets of not being in the right relationship, you'll see that for low support and hope, they're real broke down, and if you have high ACEs, it's like 1 in 4 people with low support and hope and high ACEs, they're broke down. They can't function. They cannot function. And yet, when you put in that high support and hope, it's breathing new life. Like, it is medicine. It's real medicine. It is as powerful or more powerful than probably any pharmaceutical out there. It's tremendous. Now let's go to mental health and support. And this is the same thing that you'll see. Of course, you'll see that stair-step pattern of the adverse childhood experiences study with higher adversity, there's higher degree of mental illness or suffering. But look at how incredible it is. When you have high support and hope, it's so much like, look at the people with even the highest ACEs are so much better off than people with 0 ACEs just with that support. And that's amazing. So now let's look at the role of help. Help is like having 2 or more people who can give concrete help when needed, right? I told you some of the examples. Let's just look at what the data says about help. Again, this is mental illness symptoms when you have help versus when you don't have help. So people with low help are the orange bars, and you can see the stair-step pattern. There's like a line because it means that there's a variation, there's a variety that's like deals for the variance within the responses. But basically, looking at the average here, it shows the same thing, that when you have people that you can rely on to be like, you know what, I really need your help, that it really helps people to live saner, more settled lives and to avoid really painful mental illness symptomology. There's hunger and help. I mean, as you can imagine, the high ACE people are usually like people that have faced a lot of the things like the baby, and that it's harder even as an adult to get the kinds of things that we need. But when you have people who will help you, they're going to feed you, right? And find you ways that you're going to stay fed. So ongoing hunger is much less of an issue for people that have concrete hope. Now, I want to talk about this one for a little bit because I really want people to think about how this relates to themselves. Again, this was done, it's the Washington Family Policy Council did some research in 2009. What happened was, remember the whole stuff I was talking about with the ACEs? The woman, Laura Porter, that I talked about, who works with the ACE interface, she was an elected official in Washington State. And she loved the ACEs study and understood immediately how it could be used to change policy, right? And she knew that in order for people to understand how important it was, that people they just needed to get the basic education on childhood adversity. So she fought for some money to be given, and for a bunch of counties in Washington to be able to get some training. But the problem was that half of the counties, like at what it came down to it, they didn't have money for half the counties. And so whoever was deciding or parsing out this money decided, you know what, we're going to give this money for training to the counties that experience the highest rates of mental illness, of pregnancy, of teen pregnancy, of suicide. And so they picked their counties and they started training them. And so these counties, the ones that they chose to train were the counties that were economically less well off, and had probably, my guess, I'm not sure, but I would guess, probably some higher levels of adversity just because of the difference in their economic situation. So those were the ones that they trained, and they called these communities that they trained high capacity communities because they were trained to have high capacity in dealing with trauma. And what they found was that these communities that had been trained, even though they were less economically well off, their serious mental illness and depression had significant drops based on the low capacity communities that were better off economically but had less training. And I just think about when we are thinking about right relationship as medicine, that it can help. It doesn't matter how much money a community has if we are able to have this kind of information that helps people respond differently to people who are in need. And people may be very concerned and want to avoid people that they feel are going to be trouble for them, right? But really, those people are troubled, and it's like a red flag, and we need to attend to them rather than isolate them. And that's what the blue communities understood and what the red communities did not.
Oh my word. I love the fact that we were able to take some time to really ground in studies and science because Elena, just how you started us off with saying we often we feel our relationships, right? And we feel when we're out of right relationship and when we're in right relationship. And to just for me personally to take a step back to say, oh, okay, there's like some science that's grounded in this, right? It's so beneficial to me. I would love to just kind of reset the room for us. We have talked about so much, so many good studies, so many things to really ground our relationships. And can we just do a I just got braces, you all, so I feel like I'm struggling with my words right now. Can we do a chat storm? Storm the chat. And I would love for you to just say, how are you feeling in this moment with what you've been heard, what you've been hearing? Are you feeling frustrated because aces are freaking up these days, right? Are you feeling hopeful around relationships and what could be possible? Drop a word in the chat. How are you feeling right now as it relates to what we've just been talking about? Are you like processing right now? Where are you in your mood and your mode and how you're capturing the energy that we've just been talking through? Absorbing, yes. Yes, yes. Come on, let's keep it going. What are we feeling? What's coming up? Feel into our bodies, right? Yeah. Hopeful and building relationships and understanding. I know for me, I definitely want to put the understanding at the front of my relationships going forward. Like it really is a lot deeper than just, oh, this person isn't wanting to talk to me or this system isn't just, no, it's so much deeper. And even with that said, when we think about the types of relationships that we're looking to engage in this year, right? The relationship, taking it back to Elena's point, our relationship with ourselves and how we might want to grow it and develop it, relationships with others, relationships with our community, relationships with the laws and policies around us. A core thing that I would love to encourage us to think about are the conditions that we need for those relationships, right? It's so easy for us to just say, hey, I want to spend more time with Emma this year and I want to lock in with her. But the real question is, what are the conditions that are needed to make that a relationship that is right and beneficial and worthwhile? The same is true when we think about our work, when we think about policies around us. So here's something that I would love to give you all a few moments to reflect on. You can just do it quietly within your head. I'll also drop a activity worksheet in the chat that has this as well. But take a step to just notice. What's one relationship connected to your work right now? And observe how it shows up. How does it feel in your body? How does it feel energetically, right? You don't even have to write out the name of the person or the thing or the exact relationship, but think about that for a moment. What's one relationship within your work that you are really sitting with right now? And as you're noticing that, the second piece to this is to think about the naming, right? Can you take some time to reflect on the conditions that that relationship needs? What does it need right now? Does it need more communication, right? Does it need some boundary setting, some level setting, right? That's up to you to define. And as you're thinking about what that relationship might need in order to meet those conditions, what's something you can do to move the needle a little step further, right? Is there anything you could do within that? So this is something I would invite you all to take a few moments to just quietly reflect on. If folks are feeling like some breakout groups and want to talk through it with other people, I'm happy to set those up, but would love to just poll you all. Are you feeling like you want some breakout rooms right now? Are you feeling like you want some individual quiet time? Somebody let me know what they're feeling. Go either way. I want to make some new connections. Needs to stay internal.
You want to stop sharing so we can talk to each other, or what?
Yeah, let's do it. We can do some large group share out for a moment.
Oh, there's a lot of people.
Oh, that was my thumb. I was like, whose thumb is that going up? It was mine. Yeah. So I dropped that activity in the chat, but I'm curious if anyone wants to just openly reflect on a relationship. You don't have to name names, obviously. And how it feels currently in your body and maybe what conditions might be needed. If that feels really big, I can also throw some examples up as well. It's almost like a somatic practice, right? So much of things is taking it out of our heads and feeling it within our bodies. I'll give you all a few moments to just maybe jot down some notes, reflect. And if we want to reflect together, there's an opportunity for that as well.
I'm so sorry, Karlyn. I told you to stop sharing, but then I can't open this other thing. Because now I don't. Yeah, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Karlyn, can I share an example?
Let's go. Absolutely.
Okay, I have one that's not work related, but a lot of my core support network and good friends are not in Chicago. So I have lots of long distance friendships that I lean on for community and support, especially now. And so I'm thinking about presence and what that looks like when you're not near someone physically.
Mhm.
So the conditions that I'm thinking about are like sending a message or giving a call or doing some kind of thing or like setting up a time to eat dinner together on FaceTime or something like that. Could be one step in making sure that that relationship feels nurtured, even though I'm not next to them.
Absolutely. I love that. Thank you so much for naming that. Yeah. I think those FaceTime dinner dates are often underrated. We forget how much power it is to just like connect with someone still virtually. Beautiful.
One of the things that comes up for me when you say identify one relationship, one of the things that I talked about was you could have a relationship to a larger entity, not just one person. Like I'm, having um an issue with my workplace or my community or my government. And it is interesting when you reflect on the conditions this relationship needs now, and what if the conditions it needs is kind of beyond your
Mm.
ability to offer or do something about. Some of the things that I think are difficult are like that I have the biggest trouble with is if people aren't truthful and then the relationship needs truth. And like, how do you deal with that?
Right. Right. Like the types of honest conversations that has to happen in
Mhm.
those situations, right? And what if one
Right,
person is not at a point
right.
where they are willing to have that?
Yeah, because yes, because people can just be people, or I mean that just entities even can just be about spin, can be about, well, that's not the way I see it. And it's like so difficult because this is not the easiest process all the time. And I just want to say that it's not just about taking more time, although sometimes it can be, and sometimes it can be like I've shared this exercise with Carlin where I just talked about how much energy it took to be out of right relationship with people and how I went systematically to every person I could think of that I was not in right relationship with to get in better relationship with them. And that felt really cleansing and good. And it was a relief. And
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to like avoid people or whatever. It wasn't a long list, but it took up space in my brain and it made me feel so like nervous and avoidant and all those things that people talked about. But what about the situations where you don't have the power to do it? And I just think almost that we need to go back in ourselves to being in right relationship to yourself. Like when don't have a path forward to do to achieve the conditions this relationship needs right now, go back to yourself and
Mm.
make sure that you are in right relationship with yourself.
Oh,
And so
that is
the
powerful.
tending might not be to the relationship, it could be to the relationship to yourself.
Mm-hmm. And even finding acceptance in the fact that all of the conditions are not in my control, right? But if I can internally find some acceptance and comfort in that, I can kind of
Yeah.
do what I need to do. That is a wonderful refrain. Yeah. I'm curious what else is coming up for you all as you think about the noticing, the naming, the tending. I'm redropping the Word doc in the chat for anybody that came in afterwards. So, Diana, that's for you. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, it's interesting because I was thinking through a couple different relationships, and the one small doable move in both for me was just to be willing to listen. That I
Mhm.
realized how I mean, to me, I find it really sad that it's so transformative to have when you listen to someone because it says how little they're listened to, that doing that can do it. But in both those relationships, I thought, yeah, I just have to be willing to listen, not like do anything, but just be there and give them space to process what they need to process or do what they need to do.
Totally. Yeah, I love it. We underestimate the power of listening and listening with our heart to just like, I'm just here to listen, to learn from you, to soak it all in, right? Without having solutions. But I think that takes us back to our beginning prompt of unspoken rules. People want solutions, right? We've conditioned our mind to think, okay, I need to think about the next thing to say or the next thing to do versus sitting in whatever silence might be there. Yeah. One other person I want to share. What else is coming up for us? Well, you all have access to this worksheet now. And I encourage you to, it's a good journaling practice, if anything, just the naming, the reflecting around conditions. So I encourage you all to come back to this as often as you might need to. I encourage you to share this out as well. Can I have a final thing that I encourage you all to do? And it is to complete our survey, you all. We want to bring you a campfire every single month this year, and we're excited to do that. But your feedback helps us tremendously. It helps us to know where you like the flow of these campfires, where we could use a little extra fire, right? Where we can tend our embers a little bit more. Your feedback is so important. And if everyone on this call completed the survey, we would have just enough, right, to know the direction of the campfires for this year. So let us know how you're feeling. We're ending a little bit early, but that is okay. I want to also invite you to stay connected. I love meeting you all one-on-one and hearing what's happening in your organization and how you all are relating and practicing RJ within your work. So reach out. Let's have a conversation. Rodney, I'm emailing you soon. I want to shout out Rodney, who's really been at many of these campfires. We are overdue. Time for a 101. I want to learn more about you all's work and how you all are coming into the space when it comes to RJ. Thank you all. Please, please, please take that survey before you leave. I'll leave this open so that you can have that time and that space to do it. And we look forward to seeing you next month for the next campfire. And the date will come soon. I will absolutely share these slides as well, so you'll have access to them as well. All right, you all. Thank you so much for participating in the campfire.
Thank you, Karlyn. And thank you, everybody. Nice to see everyone.
Yeah, same.